Ramzi and Halil. On the day of the rumbling, Ramzi shows Halil his stash of stolen money. Halil tries to convince Ramzi to stop stealing, but his conversation is cut short with people passing by attempting to escape, and Ramzi looks up to see an army of titans marching across the land. As the colossal titans moved through the city, they ran for their lives. Suddenly, Halil's bag of money slipped from him, all of his savings scattered on the ground. He stopped to pick it up. Ramzi turned back to help him, but by the time they started running again, it was already too late. A titan's foot slammed down, the impact sending debris flying. The flying debris struck Halil, crushing his skull instantly, while Ramzi's leg got crushed under the rock, pinning him to the ground. He reached out, still holding his hand, but it was too late. The titan stepped forward. Slowly, its foot came down over Ramzi's head, pressing down as the bones in his skull cracked, shattered, and his eyes bulged, crushed into pieces. Levi Squad was Special Operations Squad of Elite Unit handpicked by Captain Levi himself. Levi's squad was in pursuit of the female titan and planned to trap it in the forest. The plan initially worked. She was pinned down by hundreds of metal wires, and for a moment it looked like they had won. But Annie released a piercing scream, summoning a horde of titans helping her break free. After escaping, Annie shifted into her titan form again, and Petra Ral, Alua Bazado, and Eldjin returned to pursue her. They blinded her, cut through her tendons, and left her vulnerable. Eld moved in for the kill. In a blink of a second, he was caught in her jaw. Annie had focused all of her power to regenerate only one eye. Annie chewed Eld's body in half, blood spilling as his lower half dropped to the forest floor. Petra froze in shock, tried to run, but it was too late. Annie caught her with a brutal kick, slamming her into a tree. Blood smeared the bark as Petra's body dropped lifeless to the ground. Oluo was left screaming, trying to save her. He tried to fight back, but Annie hardened her skin right before impact to protect her nape. Annie kicked him. His body flew into multiple trees, splashing his blood on each. Oluo was crushed into pieces from the sheer impact, laying on the ground to a slow and painful death. Mike Zacharias was the squad leader of Squad Mike. Mike had a remarkably good sense of smell, which allowed him to detect titans from great distances. Mike was also the second strongest soldier, next only to Levi, which is no small feat. Walrose was breached by titans and Mike and his squad had no choice. They had to warn the nearby towns before it was too late. But someone had to stay behind to buy time. He battled 9 titans on his own, killing 5. Believing he had bought enough time, Mike called for his horse to retreat. But the beast titan hurled his horse straight at him, knocking him off the roof and into a titan's jaws. It bit down on Mike, splashing blood everywhere. The Beast Titan ordered the Titans to stop to speak to Mike, but he was terrified and frozen in shock. So the Beast Titan took his ODM gear and walked away. Upon leaving, the Beast Titan ordered the others to continue attacking him again. Mike, still injured and bleeding, was unable to move and fell prey to the Titans. One bit into Mike's arm, ripping it from his body. Another grabbed his scalp, peeling flesh from his bone. His legs were crushed, his body torn apart, limb by limb. Through it all, he was conscious, awake, and screaming. It was slow and brutal, one of the worst ways to go. Carla Yeager was Aaron's mother and Aaron's dad Grisha Yeager's wife. In the first episode of the anime, we see the armored titan breaking through the Shiganshina district wall and the titans flooding in. Carla got pinned under the rubble of her own home, her legs crushed beneath the wreckage. Aaron and Mikasa fought desperately to free her, but she begged them to run. Then, Hannes arrived. He tried to make good on the debt he owed Grisha by attempting to save Carla and her family. For a second, it felt like there was hope. But then, he saw the smiling titan looming over them. Hannes froze in fear and decided to save Aaron and Mikasa. He grabbed them both and left Carla behind. Aaron screamed, but there was nothing he could do. Carla's last words were, "Don't leave me." Carla was left crying as the titan grabbed her, breaking her spine with its bare hands. Blood gushed from her mouth, her body twitching helplessly. Then, it bit down. Her torso tore apart, her insides spilling from its jaws, while Aaron watched his horror unfold. Later, we learn that Aaron subconsciously influenced the smiling titan through past visions, driving it to attack his mother, making her death even more brutal. Marco Bodt was a cadet of the 104th Cadet Corps, assigned to fight the Titans after the breach of Trust District, and was given command of his squad. He was a natural leader, calm under pressure, and smart. After the breach of Trust District was sealed by Aaron's attack titan, the problem was over. But for Marco, the nightmare was just beginning. By chance, he overheard something that would later cost his life. Reiner and Berthold, taking about their roles as the Titans who breached the wall. Reiner and Berthold froze as Marco confronted them. They brushed it off as a joke, but he had already figured it out. When he tried to run, Reiner tackled him, pinning him down as he struggled, begging them to stop. Then Annie arrived, and he begged her to help him escape, but little did he know that Annie was part of the group. Reiner ordered her to remove his ODM gear, questioning her loyalty. She hesitated, her hands shaking, but in the end, she obeyed. And just like that, Marco was left helpless. The three of them stood there, silent, as the Titan approached. Marco begged them to talk, to explain, to help, but they just watched. The Titan grabbed him. His screams tore through the air as his jaws clamped down. His arm was ripped off first, then his ribs, then his torso. Piece by piece, the Titan devoured him alive. Hannes was a garrison unit captain and close friend of the Yeagers. He was kind but irresponsible with drinking. Though cowardly at times, he was willing to die if it meant saving Eren and repaying his debt. The mission to rescue Eren was falling apart. The armored Titan blocked their path, hurling Titans to stop their escape as chaos consumed the battlefield. Eren and Mikasa were thrown from their horse and left defensiveless in the open. Hannes cut down multiple Titans, but then, the worst possible thing happened. The smiling Titan appeared. Hannes saw it. The same Titan that devoured Carla all those years ago. The memory of that day burned in his mind. The fear, the regret. He wasn't going to let it happen again. But as he went to attack, the smiling Titan caught him mid-air. It bit down his torso and tore it apart as blood went everywhere. The smiling Titan was still clutching the upper half of Hannes' body. His eyes met Eren's one last time as his soul left his body. Faye Yeager. Faye Yeager was the younger sister of Grisha Yeager, and as an Eldian, she grew up in the Liberio internment zone in Marley. One day, Faye and her brother Grisha left their internment zone to chase a passing blimp, despite having no exit permit. While searching for the blimp, Faye and Grisha were harassed by the Marleyan citizens, who referred to them as rats and demons, reflecting the hatred they had for Eldians. Faye and Grisha were later caught by two Marleyan officers who offered them a choice: enforced labor or corporal punishment. Grisha took the blame, saying he forced her sister to come along, and chose to take the beating for both of them, while one of the officers dragged Faye away, assuring she would be taken home. But there was no home waiting for her. Instead, they fed her to dogs. They tore into her, ripping flesh and bones as she screamed for help. As her body was shredded, limb by limb, her tiny hands clawed at the dirt until there was nothing left of her. The next day, her shredded remains were found by the river. The guards covered it up, calling it an accident. Porco Galliard. Porco Galliard was an Eldian and the younger brother of Marcel Galliard. He was one of Marley's warriors. He had spent his entire life in Marcel's shadow, believing he had been denied the armored Titan because he wasn't good enough. But, in his final moments, he saw the truth. Eren had beaten Porco severely. His Titan form was useless. His body wasn't healing, with half of his face ripped off. He knew there was no coming back from this. In his last moments, he states how he was finally able to see Marcel's memories of sabotaging him from being selected as the armored Titan to save him. Instead of being eaten by some random Titan, he decided to give Falco the Jaw Titan, so he didn't remain a normal Titan forever and could return to human again. He stumbled forward, faced Falco, looked him in the eyes, and let himself be eaten. Falco's teeth clamped down, crushing Porco's ribs instantly. He twitched, blood spilling from his mouth as his body was swallowed whole. His legs, torso, gone in seconds. Hange Zoë. Hange Zoë was the Survey Corps commander after Erwin. Hange was an energetic, free-thinking researcher known for her unique methods and deep compassion for Titan test subjects. She even cried when they were forced to put Bean in severe pain for an experiment. After Eren started the rumbling, the group traveled to the Paradis's harbor to use the Azumabito clan's airship, but its fuel tank was damaged and they needed time to fix it. Time they didn't have. She volunteered to stay behind, naming Armin as the next commander. She took down 2 Titans with thunder spears, but she was forced to close in with her blades as more swarmed in. The colossal Titan's heat burned her cloak, uniform, and flesh away. Her skin blackened, her vision blurred, yet she kept fighting, buying every second she could. Even in pain and agony, she did not stop, trying her best to save her comrades. She fought until the airship took off, and by the time her charred body hit the ground, there was nothing but ashes left of her. Nanaba. Nanaba was a veteran member of the Survey Corps, often staying quiet and rarely speaking unless spoken to, but she was fearless in battle. Nanaba and her fellow soldiers were trapped in Utgard Castle as Titans kept pouring in, and the scouts were running empty on supplies with nowhere to run. One by one, her comrades fell. She fought to the bitter end, cutting down titans until her last blade shattered. When Gelger tumbled into a titan's grip, she raced to save him and trapped herself. The titans lunged, grabbing her arms and her legs, pinning her down. They began ripping her apart limb by limb. You can see her scream in pain as they rip off her leg while she is left begging, her voice cracking under the pain. The titans didn't stop until her final cries faded and there was nothing left of her. Ymir Fritz. Ymir's village was attacked by Eldians who slaughtered her parents and mutilated the survivors by cutting out their tongues. One night, Ymir set some pigs free, and when she was caught, King Fritz chose to hunt her down for sport. Wounded and desperate, she fled into a giant tree where a spine-like entity fused with her body and she became the very first titan. But even with that power, she remained a slave to her mind. For years, she fought Fritz's wars and bore his children, Maria, Rose, Sheena, giving him everything. But in the end, he took even more. When an assassin threw a spear at King Fritz, Ymir stepped before it. The blade pierced her chest, and she bled out slowly in front of the king. Even in her dying moment, he treated her as a slave and ordered her to get up. Fritz then told his daughters to feast on her corpse, cutting her up in multiple pieces and slowly devouring her piece by piece. Ilse Langnar. Ilse Langnar was a devoted scout known for her intelligence and determination. During the 34th expedition outside the walls, her entire squad was massacred. Stranded with no horse and broken ODM gear, she had no choice but to run. Then she saw the Titan approaching her. Instead of attacking, it stopped and stared at her. Then, in a broken voice, it spoke, a subject of Ymir. Lady Ymir, well met. Ilse was shocked. A Titan had never spoken before. She demanded answers, screaming at it, pushing for anything to help humanity. But as her voice grew louder, the Titan started losing its mind. It clawed at its face, ripping its cheeks open, blood pouring down its body. Then it snapped. Ilse tried to run, but the Titan caught her. Still, she kept writing, her hands shaking as its jaw slowly crushed her skull. She cared deeply for her family. In her final moments, she was filled with regret that she could never repay her parents for all they had given her. Then, in one slow movement, it bit her head off. But it didn't devour her completely. Instead, it stuffed her broken body inside of a tree, like a grotesque offering to the crime it had just committed. Dhalis Zachary. Dhalis Zachary was the commander-in-chief of the 3 regiments. Zachary had a demented, sociopathic side to his personality when he had set up a torture machine and subjected an official Orui to inhumane torture, a device designed for maximum pain and disgrace. Stripped naked and suspended upside down, he was force-fed his own waste through a disgusting mechanism. He planned to parade Aureli's tortured body through the city, forcing the people to witness what happened to those who abused their power. While we can't confirm if Aurelie died or survived, the torture and pain are one of the most brutal scenes from the show, and it didn't even come from the hands of a Titan. Zeke Yeager was the former captain of Marley's warrior unit, assigned to take the founding Titan from the Eldians of Paradis Island. He was the inheritor of the Beast Titan and was considered the strongest warrior, contrasting Levi Ackerman's title of humanity's strongest soldier. He faced near-death experiences multiple times at the hands of Levi, but worse than dying, he had to go through torture and pain worse than death itself. After being captured by Levi, Levi lodged a thunder spear in his body, and each time Zeke would regenerate enough, Levi would slash and cut him down with his sword, bringing him to the brink of death, again and again. When Zeke couldn't bear the pain anymore, he decided to end his life by pulling the pin on the thunder spear and exploding himself into pieces. But, even through all of this, he survived. Survived to suffer another day. He never wanted the rumbling. And when Armin told him that the only way to stop it was for him to die, he accepted his fate. During the rumbling, Levi and the team had come to stop Eren when Zeke emerged from Eren's Titan body and called out for Levi. And sure enough, Levi answered. In a swift slice, Zeke's head flew from his shoulders, his body collapsing before he even hit the ground. After a lifetime of suffering, his story was finally over. Kaya's mom. Kaya and her mother were civilians living within Wall Rose. When Titans appeared in Wall Rose, the village was abandoned, and Kaya and her mother were left behind because her mother had bad legs after a Titan appeared and began devouring her mother. Kaya was paralyzed with fear and could only watch as the Titan approached. She screamed for anyone to save her. The Titan took its time in one of the more gruesome scenes from the anime. It didn't crush her in one bite. It ate her piece by piece. First, it tore into her arm. Then it ripped away chunks of her body, all while she was still alive, still feeling everything. She kept screaming until her throat gave out, her voice breaking from sheer exhaustion. All she could do was sit there, silently suffering, as the Titan continued to devour her. Her death was slow, painful, and gut-wrenching to see. Let us know in the comments below if you thought we missed any deaths that were much more brutal.